Hi, it's Tammy. I'm coming to you live from downtown Newcastle, Delaware, and I'm here to talk with you today about addiction and my role in this arena, and what I'm seeking from you. So, first of all, I have done videos, if you've watched anything so far, on a very broad scope of health and medicine, and that's because health and medicine are a big part of my life. I've been in it for 30 years, which includes pharmacology. But addiction has been also a very big component of my life, from personal experience as a child to seeing it in the workplace, whether it be a professional workplace or even in restaurants. This is something that knows no demographic. And unfortunately, very many people are being saddled with a lot of labels and misunderstanding, and even as a culture, we incriminate those living with an addiction now, or a series of addictions. And let me just say this: addiction is not unlike an illness. It is an illness. It has, yes, there are behavioral components which would be considered psychological, but there is a book called the DSM-5 and the DSM-4 and the DSM-3 where alcohol and drug use has been categorized as a mental disorder. Now, I don't like to consider it as a problem that's not salvageable. It's not unlike, any other disease or illness, but we don't incarcerate people for having cancer or diabetes or high blood pressure or depression or anxiety. But we are jailing people because they are using drugs. Now, I'm not talking about those people who are selling. I'm talking about those who who are driving drunk. I'm talking about people who get picked up and put in jail because they've been busted for having drugs and using drugs. 2/3 of that population have reported childhood trauma. So basically what we're doing is we're punishing those who've already been harmed in the past. And I'm not saying that trauma leads to addiction, and I'm not saying addiction is caused by trauma. What I'm saying is there's a link. Even those people who do not have childhood trauma issues or reports, there's still a biological link to it. There's a neurochemical imbalance that, mind you, every one of us has. It's just how it manifests. Some people manifest as diabetes, some people manifest as allergies, some people get rheumatoid arthritis, some people get lupus, some people get cancer. This all comes down to the neurochemicals in our body, and even ADHD. One time I was talking to someone about relapse, because this is part of what I'm trying to do within treatment facilities. I've done it once before. I'm now wanting to do it as an outside contractor, whereby I work with individuals, and the work that I do is not covered by insurance. So that's part of the reason for this video, because I'm wanting to solicit the artwork from children. Children, up until about the age of 12. Older children are welcome as long as they are not engaged in drugs or alcohol. And this is a very important piece, and possibly even if they have been, engaged. Again, I don't want to exclude anyone. In fact, now that I'm speaking out loud, I think even those who have used, and that sounds probably very strange if you're not familiar with the statistic that we are placing children as young as 12 into treatment facilities for drug use disorders. So I'm looking for children. I'm looking for artists that are willing to contribute their artwork, and there is some criteria that I'm happy to send to you specifically if you are watching this and interested in participating, because your artwork is going to go to help those in addiction recovery, who are in rehab and looking for other ways to really secure their recovery and not relapse, because relapse is what's killing people. Relapse is not unlike a meltdown in autism, like I said. And I'll get into that a little bit further here shortly, or even PTSD for that matter. So the artwork is contributed, and what I'm doing is that I'm posting it in an online gallery that is promoting these pieces as note cards, gift cards, photo prints, as well as canvas prints. And they're all giclées. And what will happen is a percentage of the sales will go to this foundation, because my desire is to allocate these funds and then go into treatment facilities and approach them and say, hey, look, I have the money. I'm here to help. It's not covered by insurance, but we have this built in order to help these folks. That's really what my goal is. In turn, my costs are covered as far as it goes to getting them printed, and then there is a financial kickback to anyone who is contributing their artwork. This is a twofold contribution kickback, because at the same time, anyone who does contribute their artwork will also receive information about addiction and what it is from my 30 years, actually longer, of being around addiction. I've seen it in the workplace, I've seen it in family homes, I've studied, I've done the coursework on addiction, so there's a big familiarity in my heart and in my soul. And I will provide you information as to what addiction really is on a biological as well as behavioral level. There is, like I said, there is psychological components to it, but there is also biological components, and that comes down to the chemistry. Which brings me to PTSD, trauma, stress, meltdowns, triggers, you name it. Like I said, all of us have our own neurochemical imbalances. It's just all in how they manifest. Sometimes it doesn't manifest in a very significant disease, but we do walk around and have panic attacks, or we experience anxiety, we experience restlessness, insomnia. These are all related to neurochemical imbalances. And the reason I selected PTSD is because years ago, when I had first adopted my girls, I had they were taking a series of medications, and one of the girls was diagnosed with PTSD. And when I was talking to the pediatrician about it, and this was, again, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, but I hadn't broached the genetic aspect and that full neurochemical aspect to it. And we were talking about trauma, and his comment to me was like, when we experience trauma, it's not unlike a soldier who is in the war zone, and the things that they see, the brain has to rewire itself in order to survive, in order to make sense of it, because this is not what's normal, and this is very hard on the body. So therefore, it's a stress. Stress causes the chemicals in our body to shift. Now, I want to say something about the chemistry in our body. Our body is miraculous in the sense that it is consistently working to protect us and help us to survive, which means no matter what we're exposed to, whether it be stress or other chemicals, whatever we're exposed to, the body is consistently activating and deactivating various genes and receptors for the sole preservation of the species. So it doesn't make any difference at what level of stress of your life. It could be emotional stress, it could be environmental stress. It doesn't make any difference. Your body's consistently adapting. In this very moment while you're watching, your body is adapting to your own hormones depending on how you're feeling. Those emotions have reactions, they trigger reactions within the body, and depending on your own specific genetics, it'll manifest somehow. This is the culprit to meltdowns. This is the culprit to relapses. This is the culprit to what we call emotional triggers. Some people are better at dealing with their emotional triggers, and others are not so much. Again, when we see autism, we see, we are very familiar with the meltdowns. Sometimes we witness them in public and aren't even aware that we're seeing a meltdown. But the fact is, it's just a chemical imbalance. It's not about bad parenting. It's not about that child being a bad child. It is about a chemical imbalance that has spiked and is causing them to react to it to the best of their ability. This is not condoning relapses. This and getting involved in drugs again. This is merely trying to explain it, and this is what I will do with your children, is I really want them to understand at their level what addiction really is and how to avoid it. Because again, so my program has two sides to it. It's to help those out, coming through rehab, as well as to help prevent people from going into rehab and even making the decisions that would put them there and put them even in jeopardy of having to go into rehab. So this is a big project, and I'm really, really excited about it. And but like I say, the neurochemical imbalance, we all have it, and it's just really how it's manifesting in our system and how it ends up coming out in the world. So I'm going to come to a close at this point, and just let you know, I'm just super stoked to be doing this. It's never felt more right for me, and I welcome all your questions, because this is big. I don't want to see people be punished for being sick, and it's not a sickness in a bad way. It's just like you can't help a cold coming on. You can't help coming down with diabetes, being diagnosed with diabetes. You can't help developing multiple sclerosis or high blood pressure or depression. None of it is your fault. It's just a series of chemical fluctuations that are not working in your favor. Now, you're going to say that, you're probably, on that note, I know it's going to close, you'll probably say, well, if the body's working to preserve itself, what the heck happened? Why am I dealing with my own issues? Or why is this person dealing with addiction? Well, let me just say this to that, and that goes back to what that original doctor told me. The brain rewires itself in order to adapt. The rewiring is chemical fluctuations in order to find peace in here. What they're witnessing is horrific. Something that they would never do to anyone that they know and love, or for that matter, even in their own communities. But they're being asked to do it. So their brains rewire themselves. That said, it's difficult to rewire, which means that in our normal world, it's very difficult to undo what's been done. In other words, it's a challenge to go, okay, well, you caused high cortisol levels, and you did this, you did this, you did this. Now we need to reverse that. Once the body does what it does, it stays that way. Now, yes, there are times that the body continues to activate and deactivate, but it doesn't do what's been undone. And this is the reason why I'm such a big fan and a big pusher of the essential oils, but not in the context of what we know it to be in the books that we have available. In fact, I'm working on courses to begin to teach this to people, to begin to do this differently than what we've been originally taught. So because the body cannot undo what it's done, and I say that generally, there's a lot of evidence that shows you change your thoughts into more positive, relaxing, soothing, loving, compassionate, graceful thoughts, the body will begin to undo. But we have the emotional pressures, right? We have, we may realize that we're not the bad people that we think we are. And there's an awful lot of us that do a lot of self-annihilation and thinking terrible things about ourselves, or, out of judgment and blame and guilt and shame. So it is possible to turn those thoughts around. But because of the emotional pressures to do things now, it's difficult to stay in that mindful state. So therefore, implementing oils very specific to your genetics, and I get asked all the time, how do I understand your genetics? I understand it through listening and recognizing the symptoms and putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And again, that's one of my God-given gifts, is to be able to understand and recognize that almost instantly. And this is part of the e-courses, because it's going to be helping you to distinguish for yourself what's best for you. In the meantime, I do this with individuals, so implementing very specific essential oil choices that actually help to regulate the neurochemistry so that the mindfulness state can stay and beginning to make different choices. This is the benefit to doing the work within treatment facilities. This is the benefit of helping anyone for that matter with autism, ADHD. Again, it's not out of any book. This is very specialized, and the intent here is to make it specialized, but in a sense where you can distinguish it for yourself. But that said, this is what happens in the body. The body, you know, on a generalized scale, we are exposed to things that cause our bodies to adapt, and unless we are aware of these things, the body doesn't undo it. And even, like I say, with our own intent to change our thoughts to be more positive and loving, it is rather difficult given the environment that we live in, the life that we have. And so therefore the inclusion of these oils on an ongoing basis keeps us present, actually assists the body with rebalancing and restoring balance so that we can actually take different steps that are more in line with our intentions and get us to the point of being able to undo what was done. So on that note, I bid you adieu, and I thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to the artwork. Please, 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 please send me at least questions, and let's get those art pieces posted so that I can begin helping your children in turn, and connecting your children, and because they're here to help us. Our children are here to help, and let's do it through their artwork, and their artwork will actually help me help others, and we can really bridge the gap here and make a difference in the world of addiction. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to hearing from you. Bye now.